starting to use some kind of supporting system. See, for example, this man here, I remember this man, he was a banker, he had some problems with the blood pressure, so he could not bend forward. Now, from a standing position, but at the same time, for some of his other problems, he needed to bend forward, which was going to help. So, in such cases, certain support systems were used so that he would not fall dizzy when he's bending forward from standing, but still certain needs that are necessary to be met were met. So certain support systems were used, which is also something that Krishnamacharya used to use long ago, even in the 1920s. I mean, many people today associate the use of props with what we call Iyengar yoga. Actually, there are certain illustrations way back a few hundred years ago where certain things like ropes and support systems are used in yoga practices. So Iyengar only popularized it. But the concept of these support systems exists long ago because yogis knew that body's capacities were different. Sometimes, not only should we make it easy, but we also have to make it challenging. So here, some kind of breathing ratios would be changed so that it challenges or enhances the potential of an individual. For example, a posture like Shalabhasana, done with a ratio of, let us say, a certain duration of inhale, double the duration of hold after inhale, and the same duration hold after exhale. It's not going to be easy, it's going to be very challenging. So these were some of the things he was doing to help people as well. Another thing was modifying the sequences. Remember I told you earlier, we have an idea of how we had standing postures, then lying postures, then inverted, etc. He started to change the sequences as is necessary because, again, duration of time, duration of practice, all this starts to matter. Well, I don't know if you ever have this in your country. In the traditional times in India, many times healing of a person, especially of certain illnesses, was done through diet. And very often what kind of diet and the secrets of which diet would be good for which kind of illness always were with the grandmothers or the grandfathers. It was what is called family wisdom. It was always there. But in this era, what started to happen was the grandfathers and grandmothers started to disappear. Because the next generation of people, they were not interested in all this diet, they were interested in becoming an engineer or a scientist or a rocket technologist or whatever. So they did not want to learn what was in the family. So this started to get lost. So sometimes he would even have to take that role of a diet counselor for such people because this was a need that was coming up because of the disappearance of such a situation within people's family structures. Another phenomenal thing started to happen was a lot of people started to come with medical needs, especially sent by doctors, because in this time, in 1976, my father had already started the KYM, the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, where it was functioning as a yoga therapy center mainly, and many doctors started to become open to work and collaborate with us. So this also started to happen in this kind of an era in the 70s and 80s. So all this started to happen in this era, and it had a whole range of benefits. Particularly, it made yoga universal to everybody. Everybody was benefited from yoga, not just one kind of a target group. Anybody could do because it made it flexible. Yoga was flexible. At the same time, it was personal. What is needed for us is different from what is needed for another because we are different in age, we are different in size, we are different in capacities, we are different in basically even why we want to do yoga. So this is why it makes it universal but at the same time very personal. Another thing they started to do was, because yoga was taught so individually, it started to become a very strong complementary health system that was accepted by many of the doctors. I have to say that India is far ahead in this than many Western countries, because still there is a lot of resistance towards yoga in the Western medical system, whereas in India, this has been there for a long time, even back in the 1930s and 40s, but much more in 1970s it started to happen. So again, this was another benefit that came from this era, that it really opened the door of yoga as a system of healthcare. Finally, another benefit that was very important was yoga was started to respect different individuals, and it changed as the person changed. Many of the students of Krishnamacharya at this time were people who had been with him for some time. For example, you take somebody like my own father. He was a young boy, then an adult, young adult, then a responsible adult, a father already by this time. So as the person was changing and their family circumstance was changing, yoga was also changing. And yoga was also being adapted to respect the circumstance and stage of life of the individual. So that is the era that was a very phenomenal era, and it started way back in the early 70s and perhaps even in the 60s as a major part of Krishnamacharya's work. It was a very significant part of his work starting from 1920s. This was the constant, I would say. It was the bread that was there all the time. Another interesting thing started to happen in the beginning of 80s towards the end of his life. One of the things that happened was that many of the people who started to come to him, especially from doctors who would send them, were businessmen. A lot of business families started to come to him. And these families were controlling big businesses, but they were not controlling themselves. So they were getting stressed. They were getting burnout, they were getting all these kind of problems, lifestyle or stress related disorders. So many of these people started to come to him, and they all come to him with a kind of a contract. They said, well, we want to benefit, but we have very little time. We have very little time. So again, there is a very fascinating phenomena that he created, what is called Anga Lagava, lightness of the body. This was another era that started towards the late 80s, and by this time he was already in his 90s. Again, this is in reference to a sutra which we have in the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, which talks about the role of breath. So here what he did was, he designed asanas in such a way that all of the sequences were done only on hold after exhale. And the practices were very short. And one of the things that was also very important was, every posture was only one step away from another posture. It was not too far away. So if you look at it, this was a sequence, for example, where every movement you do on hold after exhale. Now, this is the kind of sequences he designed which were short but very efficient. So this is a sample practice, and it was very suitable for the businessmen because it respected their lifestyle or life situation. Some of them were often traveling a lot. So there was a lot of limitations based on time, but they wanted maximum benefit if possible. That's how we've become nowadays. We want a lot of benefit for very little investments, but still to some degree it's possible in yoga. And this kind of breathing system with this kind of movement also is very effective in preventing stress or burnout if you should try to experience it. So this was the era that was in the late